Most freelancers are working towards becoming booked solid. But for some of you out there, you are already booked solid and you're wondering, what now? You're making solid money, but it might feel or start to feel like you're getting stuck in client work. And I know this is how I felt when I was booked solid months in advance and I'm in this like endless treadmill of I just did this project and now I got to do this next project and oh my God, this project didn't finish. So now I've got to do it while I'm doing this other project. And it really starts to grate on you after a while. And it can feel like this thing that I've worked so hard for so long is no longer a thing that brings me joy. So that's the dark side of freelancing, or I guess one of the dark sides of freelancing. So in this episode, I want to break down 3 of the tried and true methods to turn your freelance business into something more scalable. The goal being to detach your income from the hours that have worked. And that's one of the worst things about the freelancing business model in general is if you don't work, you don't make money. You go on vacation, you're not making any money. You get sick, you're not making any money. You're in the hospital, you're not making any money. And so I want to give you 3 different options and we'll go deep into the one that I think is probably the highest chance of success for most of the freelancers who are in that position where you are in high demand and you feel like you're trapped. I'm just saying what I'm going to say next so you know that I have been where you've been and I've done enough to at least talk about these things, but I've made nearly $6 million of non-freelance income from other income streams outside of freelancing, nearly $6 million. And I've also helped 8 other freelancers make this shift, or 8 recently. They're either 6, multi-6, or in one case, even 7 figures that I've helped make this transition out of the day-to-day, like doing work for clients into something more scalable through what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm not going to sugarcoat any of this. Whether you stay as a freelancer or you feel like you've outgrown it and you go to one of these other 3 paths that I'm going to talk about today, there are serious pros and cons. And you've got to be the one to make the decision of which one makes the most sense for you. If you're new here, hi, I'm Brian Hood. This is the 6 Figure Creative Podcast. It's a podcast for serious creatives who want to earn more money without selling their souls. So if you feel like that might be you, you're in the part now where you're making great money, but you feel like you're selling your soul because it's not really what it was cracked up to be when it was just a hobby, maybe this is a good episode for you today. So the question to answer today is, you're booked solid, what now? And I'm going to talk about 3 methods of growth when you've outgrown freelancing. And then again, the last one will be the one that I'm going to focus on for this episode, because the 3 tried and true methods are things you've heard about before. I've actually talked about all of these in detail, or relative detail, back in episode 270, where I talked about graduating from freelancing. The title is actually the 3 best ways to graduate from simple freelancer to true entrepreneur with multiple income streams. That was over 2 years ago that I made that episode. But I talked through the models without really going into depth or talking about the pros and cons of each one. So I really want to get into this today. So the first one is the agency model. It's the first method. This is where you're booked solid. What do you do now? Well, you can start hiring help, build a team, so you can do more of what you're already offering. So if you're a videographer, you have to videography services. There's actually one down the street from me, Cumberland Creative. They went that agency route where it's like one guy doing a lot of work in high demand, booked solid. What does he do? Hires a team, gets an office right down the street from me, and builds an agency. And this is a tried and true method. There are plenty of agencies that are out there earning over 7 figures. And this is one of the pros, by the way. One of the pros of owning an agency or running an agency is it's one of the few ways a creative can make it to 7 figures. One of the few ways. There are other ways out there, but this is one of the few ways. And this is probably one of the most common ways. Another pro is having a team can be rewarding for some people, like myself. I like having a team. I was always the person who was anti-team. I was adamant I'm just going to be a solopreneur for the rest of my life. And something just randomly clicked in my head around early 2023, and I changed that. I have not gone back and I don't plan to go back, but it can be rewarding for some. Another pro is that agency is truly scalable, meaning you can get to not just 7 figures, not just 8 figures, you can get to 9 figures. There are agencies out there that are doing over 100, over 300, over $500 million a year. I think 500 million. Don't quote me on that, but at least 200 to 300 million a year. Now, they're generally not creative agencies. Most are in like the marketing space at that level, but there are some very large creative agencies that are out there. Let's talk about the cons now. This is the stuff that I didn't really talk about last episode from the 2 years ago, which again, if you want to listen to that episode, just go to sixfigurecreative.com/270. That'll take you to the show notes page. There will be an embedded player there. There's also a YouTube video there of it if you want to watch it on YouTube. But the first con is feast or famine swings. If you experience them as a freelancer, they suck. If you experience them as an agency, it's even worse because usually that means you have to let team go or go into massive debt to stay in your team and pay the team whether or not you have work coming in, which most people are not willing to do. So it generally means letting team members go, which means having to fire people that you may have worked with for years and years, people that depend on you for their families, for their incomes, for their food, for their vacations, for their cars, for their house, for their mortgages. And many people can't take that sort of pressure. That is a massive con if you go this route. On top of that, above and beyond feast or famine, maybe having to fire people for the lack of being able to afford them, there's also just the fact of managing a team can be stressful, even for some not rewarding at all, or just even downright painful if you've hired poorly. This is something I fortunately haven't experienced yet with my team. I've been building over the last couple of years, 2.5 years now. I've hired really good people, which makes it way easier. But there's still obviously going to be some stresses involved sometimes. Even just people are sick. People go on vacation. People don't do things they should do because they're human, right? But if managing a team sounds like a chore, an agency is probably not the thing for you. And one last con just worth talking about if you have an agency is you'll likely need to shift away from being a creative and being towards more of a manager. As you build an agency up and you have a team of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 10 people, that's where you'll have to start getting actual like middle management in place or hiring managers or getting team leaders in place. But until that point, you're basically the manager for all your employees. You're doing all the quality control. You're making sure they're doing their work. You're correcting them if they don't do stuff. If you're training, you're having to hire, train, fire, whatever. It's like, it's all on you. And that means you're less of a creative and more of a manager. If that sounds like hell, again, agency might not be the right thing for you. Now, that's the first method, the agency. Tried and true, has some pros, has some cons. But for that specific one, the agency model, I've not done. I've never run an agency before. The second method is selling shovels. This I have done before in multiple ways. A lot of my income has been through this. And this is where you look for products that people are using in your niche. It could be anything like software, hardware, digital tools, anything that helps with the outcome involved in your industry. So the examples that I have in this is I have one of my SaaS tools that I've helped develop and build over the years is called FilePass. We're in the middle, or actually towards the end of a full-on rebrand and redesign, which is, it looks amazing. But it is a tool for the audio industry, which is my background, music production, that helps music producers collaborate with their clients who are artists. So for you videographers out there who know frame.io, it's basically like that, but for audio. And we also put a few other features around it that are specific for audio, like having a paywall where people can't actually download their songs until they've paid for them. Things like that. So you don't become a debt collector. You're more of a music producer, which is what you want to be. That's the software space. There's also the hardware space. I've seen people make preamps in the audio space or guitar pedals or some sort of compressors. They'll make tools themselves that solve specific problems in their businesses that they then take out and sell to the mass market. The third type is digital tools. That can be things like templates. That can be things like LUTs, anything that's like you're selling a tool that assists in the market that you're in, usually a digital tool. I guess you could just throw software under the digital tool realm, but no matter what, this can be a very scalable business. That's the first pro of this. It can be very scalable. You can have little to no team for some of these paths. For both my software companies, I just have a co-founder for FilePass. And then for Easy Funnels, we just have a part-time support guy to do live chat. That's basically it. It's also the least demanding for your time once it's been set up and built. Meaning if you have a software company and people are paying a monthly subscription to use it, then generally speaking, they're going to keep paying as long as the tool is doing what it should do. So generally to keep a tool running is a lot less effort than it is to make a tool run the first time. That makes sense. You're just building a piece of software. It's running, and then just to manage it, fix any bugs, any glitches, little things that break here and there over time as bit rot happens. It's a minimal investment of your time. The cons, though, are this. It can be lonely, especially if you're doing anything solo. It's the same in freelancing. It can be very difficult to grow long-term because in this sort of space, generally you're selling lower ticket, meaning clients are worth dozens of dollars or hundreds of dollars, probably not thousands of dollars. And in that case, where your average client or customer in that case might be worth $50, $75, $100, $250, $300, $500, $750, under $1,000, it can be very difficult to grow long-term because low ticket economics mean it's hard to advertise. And generally, when you have a very scalable business, like software, like usually hardware, unless you have manufacturing constraints, and like digital tools, there's really no limit to how many customers you can have. The limit is usually on how many customers you can find for the product itself. And getting the word out about software or hardware can be very expensive. And so if it costs generally around $300 to $500 to acquire a customer for something that's worth $300 to $500, not very good economics. All things being equal, it's usually the case where something very high ticket gets disproportionately less expensive to promote if it's in high demand. Again, there's a lot of things that go into this. There's a lot of caveats to this, but generally speaking, these are just generalities. Something that's expensive, it's easier to sell online than something cheap. And the last couple cons here, when it comes to like selling tools, and these are probably the biggest cons for this sort of thing, is it's an incredibly competitive industry. There's a lot of bigger players out there. And those bigger players are probably smarter than you, more driven than you, have more time than you, less constraints than you, more money than you, better education than you. And those people are going to eat up the market share. Doesn't mean you can't carve out a little space for you. For example, FilePass is not even a fraction of the size of frame.io. They don't even know we exist, and that's okay. We're happy where we're at right now. But the last con here is it can take a lot of time and or money to build the product. Because in this case, something that's that scalable takes a lot of front end effort, and many people burn out before they ever get the tool or the product created. because it can be a lot of development time. It can be a lot of development costs. It can be a lot of manufacturing costs if it's hardware. But this leads me to the third method when you've outgrown your freelance business, and that is going into the teacher/coach role. And within this sort of method, there are two paths, usually two paths. There's probably a couple more, but usually there's two paths. One is teach what you know to your clients so they can do it themselves. That can be common like in the audio space, music production, my background, where a lot of people that want to learn how to produce themselves are other musicians who write a lot of music, and they just want to produce themselves for fun or so they can save money in the studio. So you're teaching your clients to do it themselves. The second path is usually where you teach what you know to aspiring creatives like you so they can get better. So in the web design space, you're probably not going to teach your clients to build their own sites, although there might be a niche for that. I actually remember I was at a co-working space and I was working with a company in there called Design Live, I think was their name, and their whole business model. They moved to California to be a part of Y Combinator, which is like a massive accelerator that's had some of the biggest companies to be a part of it in the tech space. But their whole model was they would just build the sites live in front of the clients, the websites, so that they could learn how to manage them and build them themselves. So that was a weird kind of caveat where they were kind of teaching businesses how to build their own sites. But I think in most cases, if you're an amazing web designer, like a high degree of efficacy in your space, you're just going to teach other web designers how to get better, all the tips and tricks and cool things to do to build flashy, cool websites that hopefully also convert, please God. But those are the two paths, teaching what you know to your existing clients so they can do it themselves, or teaching what you know to aspiring creatives so that they can get better. And occasionally there's overlap. Like in the music production space, it's actually a really big overlap. You'll have like, if I'm going to teach music production to somebody, I can teach it to bands and artists who want to self-produce so they can save money from the studio and maybe even grow into being a music producer one day and having their own studio. Or I'll teach it to other producers who want to get better. They like what I do. They like my style. They like my vibe, like my sound, and they want to sound better. They want to get their own style, their own sound, their own vibe. Now, the pros of this are it's very scalable if done right. You can take this and run with it very, very far to 7 figures, multi-7 figures. This is what I do with 6-figure creative. This is a done with you for teaching creatives a skill set that they can use themselves. And we've scaled this to multiple 7 figures. It also still lets you be closer to the creativity compared to an agency, at least, where in an agency, you're probably just managing your team. Whereas if you go this route where you're teaching the skill set, you are still very close to the creative act because you're still doing it, you're teaching it. And honestly, some of the best ways to get better at something is to teach it. So by teaching it, you are improving your skill set. And even outside of that, you still need to keep improving your skill set to stay on top of what's relevant and what's working now and what's popular now, sound-wise in the music space or design-wise in the web or branding space or anything. Staying on top of it is going to be better if you're going to teach it, right? Another pro is that this can be scaled with or without a team. So you can have a team like I do, or you can just do it solo. Everyone kind of has their cap there, but generally you'll kind of hit the same exact bottleneck that you hit before, and you can make the same exact decision. So just to kind of step back for a second, this is kind of a pro and a con. In freelancing, you're working so hard to get book solid and you butt up against that wall, and you can raise rates to kind of inch that wall up, but there's always going to be a ceiling there. And you can inch it up by raising your rates, but over time, you're going to hit the point where you can no longer raise your rates, and that is your max. There's like a theoretical maximum that you can make in your niche with your skill set, and you can edge it up over time just a little bit, but it's likely not going to make massive changes over time. So you've kind of hit the cap there. This is the maximum you can earn. And some people coast, they're happy with it, they're satisfied, they don't want to go anywhere else. And some people are way more entrepreneurial and they can make this leap to an agency or building a tool or launching something like a coaching program or a course or something in the education space, right? In that space, especially in coaching, which is what I'm going to kind of talk about more here, in the coaching space, you can also do it solo and you don't have to have a team, but you're going to at some point hit your max of what you can earn as a solo coach without a team. And that can be many, many times more than you earned as a freelancer, but it's still a cap. And some people still want to grow beyond that. And some people are happy with that. It's your decision on this. I'm not telling anyone that any path is better than the other. I'm just telling you from my experience what I have seen work and not work and the pros and cons associated with it. Again, the pro side of this is it can be scaled without a team, and it's usually much more lucrative than solo freelancing. And the last pro here is that this can be launched relatively quickly, meaning in a matter of weeks, or if you're really fast, a week or two, but probably closer to like a month, maybe 2 months tops, you can have this up and running and making income from it. And when I say 2 months tops, I mean for people who are actually actively working towards it. You could drag this out for years and never make a dime off of it as well. But compared to building shovels or hiring a team for agency, this is much, much faster path to actually making solid money from it. But there can be cons with this as well. I'd say the biggest con here is it can be frustrating. That's like the most realistic con that I have for this is it can be frustrating. It can be frustrating because you can have client issues, people who are just not following what you say, or people who are struggling to understand what you're trying to teach them, forces you to be a better teacher. It can be frustrating because of growth issues in your company if you've chosen the wrong model, or frustrating with your team if you hired bad people. You can hit bottlenecks. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. But I want to talk about the kind of coaching model that I do, because I feel like this is actually, it adapts really well for freelancers. And we've actually helped unexpectedly like 8 or 9 different freelancers do this to a high degree of success. And it's something we don't even really promote. It's just, it happens that in our coaching program where we're helping people get clients, we get a lot of cool creatives in here who want to shift their model once they kind of see what we're doing. And so it just kind of happens. So I'm going to screen share here. If you're on YouTube, you'll see this. If you're on a phone, you can go to sixfigurecreative.com/385. And on there will be the YouTube video, and it'll also be a screenshot of what I'm going to kind of share here. Although you have to zoom in on it. I'm going to be doing a lot of zooming here on the YouTube video. But this visual right here is the model that I've kind of mapped out for the clients that we work with. It's the same model that we do ourselves. And I want to talk through it because I think it's a really cool model. So it starts like any kind of like higher price thing. It starts with a sales conversation or a sales call or consultation call, whatever you want to call it. This is where you're going to identify the needs of the person, figure out where the gap is between where they are now or where they want to be. And if the thing that you can help them with makes sense, you sell them on what you can help them accomplish. The sales process is basically a diagnostic sale where you're diagnosing where they are now, you're figuring out where they want to be, and there's usually a gap between those two things. And then if the thing you can sell them will solve the problem, you make an offer. Do this in freelancing, do this in agency, do this in coaching, anything that's a higher price point that you need a deeper understanding, you have to have a sales conversation. So that's the first part. The next part is an onboarding process, and everyone's is different, but just basically gathering the information you need in order to help make the transformation happen. Same in freelancing or in coaching. This is where things start to deviate from a freelancing model into a coaching model. And that is what I call the on-ramp. This is a one-time thing. This is where you basically say, what skills or what foundation do I need to build for this person in order to help them long-term? I call it the on-ramp. This is where you build a machine or a skill set. In our case, for Six Figure Creative, we help people build their client acquisition machines in this step right here. But I have another example over here on the left side of one for like a music production or mixing coach program. And that's where in order to help someone be a better mixer, they have to first make sure they fully understand how to use their digital audio workstation or DAW, how to prep sessions so they can actually start to mix things. They have to understand compression, EQ, et cetera, before they can actually start mixing music, right? So there's a basic foundation that you have to help them build as what we call the on-ramp. And this is usually a one-time thing. So if you're a web designer and you're teaching people how to build beautiful websites in Webflow or Framer, then you're going to teach them to make sure they understand the tool that they're using before you get into all the intricate details of how to make things look beautiful. They just have to understand the foundation of it. That's one example. If you're a photographer and you're teaching people to make better photos, teaching the basics of aperture and framing and lighting and ISO and all the other things that photographers have to know, that would be the on-ramp. Then we get to the actual recurring. And this is the big difference that I think a lot of people miss out on when they are offering coaching, is they don't have this recurring element in there. And I think it's a detriment to both you, the person running the business, and the client who's trying to get better at a skill set, is if you don't have this step in there, they're missing out on getting better over time, which I think every single transformation does take time. And what most coaching programs fail at is they'll do like, it's 2 months, it's 3 months, or it's 8 weeks, it's 12 weeks. And when that's done, goodbye, you've been transformed. The problem is you've taught them the on-ramp, the skill set they need in order to start getting better, but you've dropped them at the exact point where they need the most help long-term to get better at something. It's like coming to the gym, I'm going to build your base foundation of strength up, and then I'm just going to kick you out and say, good luck, you're on your own, you can do this for the rest of your life. No, you can't. You're probably going to need some accountability. You're probably going to need some more feedback on what you're doing wrong. You're probably going to need somebody to push you. You're probably going to need someone to help you train, add things, deload, whatever. Maybe your nutrition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's talk through the training loop. This is the thing you're going to basically go through with someone as long as they want to be with you. And this is the big unlock for me, is like, I've had clients for years now, and we've just been going through the same kind of recurring training loop for years, because there's always something to fix in any business that we work with. Just like if you're a music producer, there's always something you can do to help someone get their mixes better, or help someone write better songs, or help someone make more beautiful websites, or help someone be a better branding person, or run better design workshops, or whatever. So the training loop looks like this. This is the recurring thing. Identify an issue that the person has. What problem do they have? What's their weakest link in the skill set you're trying to teach? You work with them for them to try to fix it. They fix it on their own. They submit it for feedback for you so you can review it and give them the feedback. If it's not up to snuff, they need to get better at it. They need to improve in some certain way. They just go back to trying to fix it again. They keep submitting for feedback. You give them more reviews, more thoughts, more ways to improve. They just go back and fix it. Submit for feedback, review, until you call it approved. This is good enough. Now we go to the next issue. What's the next thing we need to work on? The best way I can illustrate this is for, when we have a lot of music producers in our audience for this, so I can just show you the recurring loop for mixing. When someone has learned the basic foundation of how to mix a song, now they need to go through the repetitions. They need to mix a lot of songs. Or if you're a songwriter, you need to write a lot of songs. So in this case, the mix engineer will give them the files to mix. The client will mix the song. They'll submit that song mix for feedback to their coach. The coach will review and give, in this case, asynchronous feedback is what this client was doing that I was mapping this out for. He's basically doing a Loom video. Here's all the things in the mix that we got to fix. Fix it and resubmit it to me. They remix it, they submit it for feedback, et cetera, et cetera. They're just going to keep going in that loop of submit for feedback, review it, give you my thoughts, fix these things. They're going to resubmit it, give thoughts, repeat ad nauseum until, again, they're at a place that it can be approved. Once the mix is approved by the coach, a new session has been assigned to work on another thing. Okay, cool. In this mix, we're going to focus on getting a better snare sound. Or in this mix, we're going to work on a more balanced vocal or a brighter vocal or whatever. You give them an assignment, the thing they need to work on the most in the mix, and then you just keep going over this loop again and again and again. Let's talk about what's needed now. Let's just see this sort of model kind of makes sense, especially if you see it, you kind of understand, I get the gist of it. What do I need to do as a freelancer to make this transition? The first thing is just getting a basic offer and pricing model down. An offer is just like, hey, if you are struggling with your mix, I'll help you do X, Y, and Z in the next 30 days to get your mix to this level or to this standard. And I'll do it for this much money. A basic offer together with pricing to match it. An avatar is the next thing you'll need, is which avatar we're going to sell this to. So in this case, you're trying to decide, am I trying to actually target musicians or bands who are trying to get better? Or am I trying to target mixing engineers who are trying to get better? And this can differ depending on which person you are. Some people have a bigger name in your space, and so you have a lot of attraction from other creatives in your space. You'll have like a lot of followers who are other creatives just like you, who look up and aspire to be you. In that case, you'll probably want to target those sorts of people. In other cases, you're like somebody who gets great results for your clients. And in that case, a lot of times you can package up what you know to get those amazing results, especially in the B2B space, and essentially sell this as a done with you type program to your clients. So you're selling it to your clients to be able to implement it themselves. So for example, if you're a copywriter and you're amazing at writing emails, for example, or you're amazing at doing product launches, that's the thing you package up and sell to your clients through a done with you type program. The third part of this is the beta program. This is the actual on-ramp you're building out first, building up the base foundation of knowledge that your clients need in order to be able to be helped long-term through that recurring loop that I talked about. So you want to figure out what's your lesson plan? What are you going to teach in this? You want to figure out what sort of tech do I need as far as collaborating with my clients? How am I going to deliver the teaching on this? Am I going to do it live? Am I going to do it asynchronously? Am I going to do it through a coaching portal of some sort? And once you have the offer, the pricing, the avatar, the beta program, you'll want some sort of sales process that helps you sell this. And I mean, you'll want to do a sales phone call or Zoom call in this, or in person if you can. That's the preferable way of doing it. But there's still more to it than just the sales process and like what you're saying on the calls, like the script and the outline. There's also like your follow-up process. There's also like, how are you going to sequence things from, am I doing applications? Little details like that. But a lot of those are nearly the same as your freelancing. So if you've been doing freelancing for a while and you're successful with it, you can usually almost one-to-one adapt what you've been doing with this. The only exception is if you've been doing proposals. You don't want to sell this via proposal. You want to do it via a live call. The next piece is what I call like version 1 promo. This is where you're trying to fill up your beta program. You really only need 5 or 10 people for this to work. And you don't want more than that. You also don't want less than that. You don't want less than 5. You don't want more than 10. Somewhere in the sweet spot is between 5 and 10. And a good beta price is somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000. This depends on the clients you're working with, depends on the niche you are, but the lowest I've seen is 2,000. The highest I've seen is 5,000 for like a beta program like this. So if you're going to do this and you have a beta cohort of people, let's say 5 to 10 people, it could be anywhere on the low side of $10,000 if it's 5 people for 2,000 each, or it could be anywhere on the high side of $50,000. That's 10 people at $5,000 each. From there, you'll just deliver the actual beta program, the actual lesson plan that you're teaching. And I encourage in this case, when you're doing something like this, whether you're teaching live or you're teaching through like pre-recorded videos, that you do something called checkpoints. And that's where you teach something, they go off and do it, and then they submit that for feedback to you. And that feedback can either be done on a live call every week, or it can be done asynchronously. So they can just submit it and you can give feedback through something like Loom. But when you're delivering this beta, you want to make this a two-way street where they're doing actual work, submitting it for you to review, and you're giving real feedback. It's kind of like what I said earlier, where you're going through that feedback loop. You're doing little mini feedback loops during the on-ramp part. This is the one-time thing you're learning the base skill set, how to use Webflow or how to actually set up a session and mix it for the first time if you've never done it before. This is where you're gonna be like, all right, go set up a session, send me the session itself, or send me a Loom video of you going over the session so I can look at all the stuff that you did. I'll look through it, I'm gonna give you my notes, and you're gonna go back and fix all the problems that I see. You're basically doing quality control in this case. And once you've delivered the beta and you've gone through it, obviously you're going to improve it over time. You're going to revise it over time, but that's where you shift to the recurring offer. And that's where you might, at that point, help them with their long-term design process, help them with their long-term copywriting process, whatever your niche is, you shift them over to the recurring offer. That's the big picture, 30,000, 40,000 foot view of how to deliver something like this when you're looking to graduate. Let me talk about who this works for and who this doesn't work for, because this is a really important part of this. This works for, and I've seen this work, and we have clients in the music and audio space. We've seen this work with music producers, mixing engineers, mastering engineers, songwriters or songwriting for composers. We've seen this work when you're teaching your clients how to do it themselves, or teaching aspirational creatives or aspirational producers in the audio space who want to get as good as you are. We've seen both of those work. This can work in the web design or brand design space. That's where you're teaching aspiring designers, not as much as teaching your clients to do it themselves. That can work, but that's not the direction that I would probably push people. It's more about teaching the aspirational people. This works in copywriting, where you're teaching business owners how to do it themselves, or teaching aspiring copywriters how to be better at writing copy. One of our coaches actually is a long background as a freelance copywriter, and he has a multi-six-figure copywriting coaching program of his own. So if you're a copywriter and you're in this space, he might be a good coach for you. Photographers, videographers is another one where if you're teaching aspiring photographers and videographers to get better at their craft, there's so many different verticals and little niches and nooks and crannies that you can fit within there that would be worth doing. But there could also be, if you're like a videographer who does content and your big specialty is creating content for your clients for social media and things like that, but you charge an arm and leg for it and you work with big clients, it could also work where you're teaching smaller versions of your clients, like smaller business owners or micro influencers, how to do it themselves with your style and methodology. So that can work as a crossover where you're working with clients and not with other creatives. Now there's way more, but like that should give you an idea of like who this works for and who it could work for. But let's talk about who this doesn't work for. This doesn't work for you if you don't like working with other people. I guess in freelancing, you can kind of go off in your dark cave and just tweak knobs and numbers and play with things and design stuff or mix things or whatever without any sort of outside input. But if you don't like working with people, you don't want to run an agency, you don't want to coach. Those are the two things. You could either keep freelancing in your cave, in your bubble, or you could try to build the shovels. Like I talked about, that second method where you're building a tool of some sort that can be done in a dark, damp cave. The second type of person this won't work for is if your skill set isn't desirable. When I say desirable, you don't have to have a skill set that's like has a high ROI attached to it. You can make really good money just teaching pottery or art or design or whatever. Even if the people you're teaching have no professional aspirations with it. They just want to learn the creative skill set. In some cases, that's even easier to scale when people are in the self-actualization mode of life where they're trying to become their best selves and you can aid them in that. Those are really healthy people to work with. They're really fun people to work with, but it also obviously works when it's tied to ROI as well. But what I do mean is if your skill set isn't desirable from the standpoint of, are you actually good at what you do? Do people desire the skill set that you have? Whether you are in the creative space that has no real professional aspirations tied to it, like just becoming an artist for fun or making pottery. Yes, you can make money making pottery. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm just saying those are things that may not be directly tied to an ROI like a copywriter would be. Copywriter is like all ROI in most cases, especially direct response copy. But basically, are you good or not? That's the bottom line here. If you're not good, this won't work for you. Another time this won't work for you is you could be good at what you do, but if your proof isn't impressive, then it's going to be difficult for you to market yourself. You have to either be so absolutely clearly amazing and above everyone else around you just by looking at your work, or you have worked with impressive names, or you've gotten impressive results for clients. If none of those things are true, then this will likely not work for you and you will fall flat. Another way this won't work for you, another type of person this won't work for you is if you are not a good teacher. Now, this is myself. Like there's literally a YouTube video of me saying I'm a terrible teacher. It's like the first YouTube video I ever posted. And that ended up not being true. It was just a belief I had. But at the time I wasn't a good teacher, but I did grow and develop that skill over time. So you can shift into becoming a good teacher and you're not stuck at any one level as far as am I a good teacher or not. But you do have to have a baseline ability of teaching in order to transfer a skill to somebody, because knowing a skill is not the same as transferring that skill to someone else. It requires some level of patience. It requires some level of empathy. It requires some level of just being able to communicate your ideas and thoughts, especially something more nebulous in the creative space, into actual actionable frameworks and structures that people can actually use. So you have to be willing and able to create structured curriculum or repeatable systems, which some creatives, that just sounds like death to. And if that sounds like you, this may not be the move for you. When I'm talking about coaching, I don't mean just getting on a call with someone every week and just being their like creative counselor, being their creative life coach. That's not what I mean. Transferring skill sets to someone else so they can actually become good at something. For some people out there, this is the right move where you like working with people, your skill set is desirable, you have some sort of impressive proof behind your work or results behind your work, and you are or could be a good teacher. Again, I've gathered all this, not just for myself, but from the other 9 creatives that I've helped do this with. Of the 9 creatives I've helped in our coaching program, 1 is at 7 figures, 5 or 6 are at multi 6 figures. 1 is just below the 6-figure mark. He's like the 6-figure run rate, probably at like 7,000 a month, something like that. And we're still working with him. And 1 is just brand new and he just got started. So yeah, I don't have any numbers on him. And this is something that we don't even offer formally. This is not something like we help people with formally. We have no offer for this. We have no help publicly done for this. But I also realize this is something you should look out for yourself, that sometimes your niche chooses you. You just, without even looking for it, you find these sorts of clients, or clients that seem to have more success with you, or clients that you really love working with, or clients that have some sort of like cool thing that happens. That can be something worth leaning into. So I'm going to attempt to lean into this. And so you might see from this podcast and maybe a couple of emails, I'm going to do my own beta program where I'm going to help 5 of the right freelancers grow a scalable kind of program and get it up and running. A 6-figure scalable program. So I mean like a done with you type coaching program like I showed in the model that I screen shared with. The goal is to detach you from the dollars per hour bottleneck that a lot of freelancers hit, where you've hit that upper limit and you feel stuck and you can't get away from it. And I've seen the numbers behind this. A good freelancer can earn about 75 an hour, up to 100 an hour if you're in a really high demand space and you've inched your values up. But in a scalable program, I've seen $250 per hour and up. It can be very, very good, even in the beta context. So if you are a in-demand freelancer, meaning you've worked with probably 100 plus clients, you are well above average with your skill set, you have a good personality, meaning like you can show up on camera, on Zoom calls with some level of energy and like can communicate, then I'm putting this offer out there for those of you who match that sort of criteria. Just go to sixfigurecreative.com/beta. There should be a short-ish, I don't know how long it's going to be. I haven't made the application yet, but it'll be an application on that page to fill out. And I'm going to see who comes through there. And if I see enough people that I feel excited about helping with this, meaning you have probably hit your capacity as a freelancer, you are probably already making good money, you are trying to escape that sort of like dollars per hour hamster wheel that I found myself in, and you want to try making that shift into something more scalable to either help your clients do it themselves or help other creatives like you who aspire to be you, just go to sixfigurecreative.com/beta, fill out the short application, and I'll be in touch with you. And this will be something that I will work personally with you on if I end up doing this. If I don't get enough interest or I don't get enough people that are of the high enough quality where I think this is feasible for you, then I just won't do it. But go to sixfigurecreative.com/beta, something I'm trying out, and we'll see where it goes. So that's all I got for you this week on the Six Figure Creative Podcast. Until next time, peace, and thanks for listening.